Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Tyrone back with Tech Life. And here I have a great article for you guys from Fierce Wireless. I will leave a link to it in the description so you guys could check it out. So the title here is AT&T CEO says spectrum issues are holding back ubiquitous broadband. So I want to speak on that. So, is he perhaps saying that his spectrum position is weaker than the competition? That's maybe what he's pointing out here, right? And they obviously put in a petition with the FCC, pretty much saying, hey, T-Mobile's getting all the spectrum, put up a spectrum screen. And as I told you guys in the video this morning, that could potentially affect all carriers. That's not just signaling out one carrier. If they put a spectrum screen and says this is capped at X amount of megahertz, that means AT&T and Verizon too. So it's interesting from two perspectives, right? The one perspective is, AT&T wants to be in the fight. They may not want to win, they may not want to lead, but they want to be in the fight. They want to be able to compete. And then the second perspective is, just some stuff that I hear internally and what I see from analysts. AT&T is still trying to figure out how they're going to monetize the spectrum they got. They don't have as much mid-band as the competition, but they got a good amount. They spent a decent amount on the C-band auction, and then they spent the most on the DoD auction, which in most of the country is going to give them about 120 megahertz aggregated, right? In Dallas, I think it's 140, right? 100 megahertz C-band, 40 from the DoD. That's a lot of spectrum still on just that mid-band slice that AT&T is still trying to figure out how they're going to monetize. So, yes, I understand Stanky. Ubiquitous broadband is important, and that also signals that he's looking to go bigger on fixed wireless access. In other words, let me flip this around here. He might be saying that if I had more spectrum, I could do fixed wireless access to a much bigger scale, and we could fix the broadband gap once and for all. Maybe he's coming from that point of view as well. But like I said, right? Work with what you have first. They got a lot of spectrum. They have a lot. Let's not kid ourselves. Yes, they don't have as much as the competition, but they still have a lot of spectrum that they have to figure out how they're going to monetize. And even so, that they're now even starting to come around on the fixed wireless access story. Maybe not as much as Verizon and T-Mobile, but they're starting to open up to it. Why? Cha-ching. They got to make money. They spent they spent billions of dollars on C-band. They spent more money on DoD. They got to show an ROI. They got to show a return on investment. So recently, John Stanky spoke at a discussion or a conference, and he's pretty much looking. There are barriers for greater adoption of broadband in the U.S. And just to read off this brief one here, you want more competition and resiliency in broadband in the United States. You need deep spectrum, he said. United States is not in an inevitable position right now for the next 10 years relative to some other developed nations. So he's giving a future outlook. He's not really speaking in the right now. He's speaking 10 years out from now. There's not a lot of spectrum in the pipeline. There's not a lot of spectrum auctions scheduled even in the next 5 years. So maybe he's speaking from that point, but you're still deploying the C-band that you just recently, not too long ago, bought. You're still heavily deploying that. You haven't even taken that to scale, and you haven't even monetized that yet. So I get it. I understand 6G is already in R&D, and it's already being discussed in the early stages. Eventually, the 3GPP will have a standard for 6G too. But I'm hearing a lot of that is going to be in the terahertz, right? And I guess that Stanky has a point there too, because I don't think any of the U.S. carriers have any terahertz of spectrum, right? They're all sitting on millimeter wave right now. But I'm sure as we get closer to 6G, we'll probably know more about how that's going to work out. But, excuse me, regardless, Stanky still has to put a product in front of his customers, right? Broadband, wireless, maybe they want to go bigger on that if they had more ubiquitous spectrum, but they're doing fiber too, right? So take advantage of some of the government broadband money and deploy fiber in areas that you previously maybe wouldn't have. Do that too. And then in some of those areas, of course, even if you don't have that ubiquitous spectrum, as he called it, you still got a lot of C-band and DoD. Deploy that first. You're barely about to hit 200 million pops with C-band. Probably a combination of the C-band and DoD, likely more of the C-band than the DoD. You still have 100 million pops to get to 300 million where all of your other competition is going. Do that first. That's probably, let me see. AT&T gets to 200 million end of this year. They wouldn't get to 300 until the end of 2025. And that's even if they accelerated that build. If they take their time, they might not get there till 2026. Right? If you look at T-Mobile, they accelerated and they really pushed. It took them about 50 million a year, right? Getting to that more spread out geographic footprint. It took them 50 million in 1 year and another 50 million in another year to get to cover that 100 million to get to 300. Took them 2 years. Right? If AT&T is even slower than that, it might take them through, 2026 perhaps. But again, I don't think this is alarming. I think it's just him giving a future outlook on where the industry is headed. By that time, he's likely going to be retired anyway, so it wouldn't matter. But right now, AT&T's biggest focus is monetization. They need to monetize that spectrum. They're not even in a market like mine. For an example, El Paso, they have a lot of fiber penetration. So they're not going to get a huge revenue boost from fixed wireless access. Even if they do it in a few neighborhoods, they do it at a few apartments, whatever, they upgrade some of their DSL customers to this product. They're not going to get a huge amount of ROI from that. Maybe some, but it's not going to be big, right? Whereas T-Mobile and Verizon, they're really putting it out there because they don't have fiber running to the home here. So there's a lot of houses and neighborhoods, a lot of apartments, that are getting on this across the entire city, and T-Mobile is actually making good revenue and profits from it, and Verizon as well. So again, this is just future talk. I think right now AT&T is in a solid position. They don't have the most spectrum. They don't have anywhere. They don't have as much as the competition, but they still got to figure out how to make money with what they got. So make sure you guys stay tuned. Like, share, subscribe. See you in the next one. Peace.